Hey, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of Play as a Four-Letter Word. My name is Ryan Reich, and I am the person that makes and produces and hosts this podcast as usual. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is, I didn't have a guest, so I'm going to be the guest. I've had a really crazy week, and didn't have time to get an interview set up and get the conversation thing prearranged. Life gets in the way sometimes of these projects, so I threw it on my Instagram if anybody wanted to ask me some questions, and I got some good questions that I think I could answer, and I think it's hopefully an interesting podcast. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna do it. If you're watching it, which not a lot of people do, but if you're watching it, you can see I have on my Ceramics is Hard shirt. So the t-shirts I said I was going to do, I imagined it hard enough and I did what I had to do and it actually came reality. So follow your dreams and they will become true. So I threw it up on my Instagram and I got 10 awesome questions. So I'm just going to dive into the first question. This one is from Griffinware Co. Subtle Griffin. I met him at Tim Kowalski's workshop at Esperanza High School, Kevin Kowalski's high school in Anaheim, California. Griffinware Co. asks me, what's the first pot you ever made and do you still have it? Well, I guess there's two versions of that answer. The first pot I ever made in my entire life was probably when I was in pre-kindergarten, and my mom still has it. And in my pre-kindergarten class, I think I was 4 or 5, we did like holiday little ceramics things, and I think for Easter we did like a little bunny in an Easter basket thing, and I guess that's kind of a vessel that I made. And then when I started kind of for real, like throwing on the potter's wheel and doing that kind of ceramics like what I do now, that was in high school. So the story behind that, because I guess I'm just going to tell stories today. The story behind how I started ceramics was, it was the summer before my freshman year of high school, and my mom was like, not cool. I was like 15, so I turned 15. So I was 14 years old, and I turned 15 that summer. I was born in August, so my birthday's in August. So I guess I was like 14 years old, and my mom said, you have to go take a summer school class, like take a fun class or just take whatever you want. And my neighbor, who was a year older than me and was a year ahead of me in high school, he was a freshman going in to be a sophomore. I was an 8th grader going into freshman year. And he's like, oh, I heard ceramics is fun. Like, let's take that. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, take ceramics. I took ceramics and some like study skills class. And I remember it was my high school. I went to Claremont High School, just kind of on the outskirts of LA. Claremont is where like Paul Soldner, I didn't know this when I was in high school, but Claremont's like where Paul Soldner lives, and I used to drive by Paul Soldner's house every day. I didn't realize it, on Baseline Road. Had these big like cement posts, these big cement like planter pillars, I guess he made out front. And anyways, so I went to Claremont High School, and it was all wheels. It was all like kick wheels. Like everyone other classroom has like desks lined up, like whatever, like 5 rows over and 5 rows deep, or 6 rows over and 6 rows deep, whatever it was. And it was all like kick wheels, like Lockerbie kick wheels. And I think there was a few of the Lockerbie kick wheels that had motors, and I think there was like 1 or 2 like Shimpos, like the RX kind of Shimpos. But I remember like my first experience in high school, I remember going into the class on the first day, and there was an advanced student throwing on the potter's wheel. And he was throwing on something cool, and I was just like amazed, and I was like, we're going to do this. And so excited. And then I was, as many people probably are, they're really excited when they first try it, and it's super difficult, and it's way more frustrating than they ever realized. But something that I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it, and I practiced, and I got proficient enough to say that I kind of know what I was doing. And I don't have the first pot that I made. I don't have much stuff from that first summer. I think I have. I think I found a few years ago. I found something in my mom's. I was going through my mom's stuff when they were moving. I think there's she has somewhere like one or two old, really crappy pieces that probably have like a 92 on them. That's 1992 when I started. One day I'll find those, and I know I have the stuff that I made when I was in pre-kindergarten in a box somewhere. I don't know where it is, but actually I think it's above me right now. I'm in my garage, and I have a space in my little storage area, and I'm pretty sure that I have those pots up there. The next question is from Liv Ranieri, and she asked me, "Would you ever consider other mediums for sculpting?" I don't know. I don't really know if what I consider myself an artist or a sculptor. I don't really consider myself a sculptor. I would consider myself an artist, a potter, a ceramic artist, and I've done sculpture, and I sometimes make sculpture, but I think I'm more of like a functional artist in my heart. Something about making some things that are useful that I think is what really appeals me about the making process. So like kind of what another part of like chapter of my life was I got my master. I started teaching high school where I'm at now in 2005. And at the same time I started 2005 2006 school year. And then I started grad school at the same time, right kind of close by. Cal State Fullerton, and I work in Placentia, which is right next to Fullerton. So anyways, I went to grad school and I started teaching kind of at the same time at the high school I'm at. And after I kind of got my master's degree, I bought a house. And I bought kind of a fixer-upper house kind of on the west side of Fullerton, kind of right by Buena Park, kind of where Not the Berry Farm is. Kind of right there on the border. It was not a great house, not in a great area, but it was like a learning experience. So it was a fixer-upper, and it was what I could afford, and I wanted I was very specific. I didn't want a townhouse or a condo. I wanted a house, and it was like a 1923 old school house, not architecturally very exciting, but it was like an old house, and it was a fixer-upper, and the whole house had to be redone, so I didn't do everything, but I did a lot of it. I learned a lot about drywall, and I learned a lot about tile, and I learned a lot about, like kitchens and bathrooms. I feel pretty confident about doing I put cabinets in. I've done a lot of like home remodeling, and a lot of that, it's not sculpture, but a lot of it is the same. It scratches that same itch for me of like building and being creative and being productive, because I'm a workaholic. I've kind of come to, realize I'm a workaholic, and I like to work, and I like to be productive, and I like to make problems and solve problems. So, and one of the projects I did when I redid my kitchen, I did concrete countertops. So I like bought the book, and I read the book like 6 times, and it was all about making a mold out of like melamine with like a rebar like armature on the inside, and I bought the polisher, and it's a wet sanding polisher, which turns out to be very similar to the materials and the tools that you use when you polish the bottoms of your pots. The polishing pads are made out of the same materials. They're just in different kind of forms. They're made for like a kind of like a grinder, but a grinder that has like a water feed to it. So I bought that tool and everything, and I redid and I built all my countertops, and that was really cool. So that's something that if I like didn't do ceramics, which I couldn't imagine I wouldn't do that, but I could imagine doing some kind of like custom home remodeling kind of stuff like that. I also taught 3D art for my first few years of teaching high school. I think it was like from 2005 to 2013, so like 7-8 years. I taught 3D art and design and ceramics, and I really liked cardboard, and I thought cardboard was a really cool material that's underrated. And I see some artists now doing. I remember when I was teaching teaching, I would always be able to find really cool examples of artists making things out of cardboard. And I know there's a really cool artist I follow now. Her name's Lauren Saval. Can't say it. I'm not sure, but her stuff's awesome. She does these really cool animals, and there's cardboard, and so I really like cardboard. I wouldn't do. I would just. I don't know what I would make. And I like wood. I have some basic woodworking tools, and I don't know, but cement's cool. Concrete cement. I could see like building these cool, crazy molds and casting like outdoor furniture. I think that'd be really fun. I think that's something I could get into. Like, I think outdoor landscape stuff and that kind of like with concrete countertops and you know, I think that's something I could probably get into if I, didn't deal with clay the way I do with it. But I'm a ceramics person. I've been doing it for a long time, and it's such a part of my life and my livelihood. I even convinced my wife to give our kids middle names like ceramics names. So my first son's name is Owen. His middle name is Clay. Got that in there. In retrospect, I kind of wish I pushed harder for Clay as a first name. And then the second one's name is Nate or Nathan, and his middle name is Ash. So Nathan Ash, not Ash with an E. Ash like that burnt wood ash. So ceramics is such a part of me in my life, and I know it's going to be a part of me in my life forever, and I can't imagine not doing it. So yeah, I would consider other mediums more out of necessity, but not like if I would change my whole thing. The next question is from B-Pots Ceramics. And the question is, what got you started on this sneaker style? Well, what got me on the sneaker style was I was doing my, the body of work I was working on before this, I was doing more like a color, just like vertical lines and mostly horizontal lines and some vertical lines, and there were some dots in there for a while. But it was really just kind of like a line color. It was like a color study or color body of work where I was really looking at colors. I had kind of gone to see some big graffiti show in LA called Beyond the Streets, which was like a big time kind of retrospective graffiti show, and I've always kind of liked that vibe. And I kind of went to that art show and I saw the the culture and the vibe that kind of street art thing is. And I'm a white guy from suburban like LA. It's really not LA, it's more of like the Inland Empire. Now I live in like the northern part of Orange County, so I'm just like a suburban Southern California guy. But I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I grew up in a lot of this culture and in some kind of like roundabout way. So anyways, I saw that art show, and that was really like, just notice how like colorful it was, and everything was just color, and it was just fun colors and color everywhere. And then looking at like ceramics, there's a lot of ceramics people using color, but there's also a lot of brown. And like my whole life, my mom was always like, "Oh, you make so much brown. Like, why is everything you make brown?" And definitely the stuff I've been making over the last 10 years isn't as brown, but I think the stuff I was making when I was in college was a lot browner. And I think it was really started as like an exercise in color, and then as I was doing that, I was kind of looking at a variety of inspirations, and then at one point I kind of was like, man, the Jordan 1s have some really cool color combinations. Like the Jordan 1s are this like iconic shoe, and there's like very simple like color schemes, like using black and white and then maybe one other color for a lot of their the shoes, the original kind of ones. And then I kind of made a couple that were just like black and red, I think, which is kind of like the Bulls colors, kind of the OG Jordan 1s, like the black and red and the black and white and red ones. And I was kind of doing that. And then I was kind of like thinking about um, looking at how a lot of other. So I'm like, I teach high school ceramics and I'm making pottery and I make pottery in my garage. This is where I'm doing my podcast right now, is where I do my work. You can, if you're watching it, you can see there's like shelves behind me, and there's mugs and there's glazes and there's gift and grip arms. And anyways, so as I'm trying to like be a ceramic artist and a teacher, I'm trying to do the whole Etsy thing and trying to make work and sell work. And I'm noticing what other artists, how other artists are selling work. And you can't help but notice how some artists sell, they release their work at a certain time and it sells out right away. And it's like, oh, or sells out relatively quick, within 5, 10, 15 minutes, they're sold out and people are waiting in line, waiting to click the button. And then just kind of being like aware of what's going on and being a high school teacher and being aware of like what youth culture is and being around teenagers all the time, kind of became aware of the, I guess, the hype beast movement, where the kids are waiting in line to buy the Supreme shirts and then reselling them at a crazy markup because they're limited edition. And then just learning more about like that kind of translated to like having kids come into my class who are like wearing expensive shoes and they're like, oh, I got to take my shoes off and wear with my socks because I don't want to get my expensive shoes dirty. And then I was just kind of like, thinking I always liked shoes and I've always been into shoes a little bit. So I kind of started thinking about taking the Jordan idea and then the like the hype beast shoe sneakerhead culture, and then the mug connoisseur collector culture. And I remember I was like thinking about it, and I was always very like into the I was very into like the bottoms, like the soles of the shoes and the textures and the patterns. I remember my teacher in college did like, would make stamps. He would show his beginning students to make stamps. I didn't have them for beginning ceramics, but he would make his beginning students make stamps on their shoes. And I know Paul Soldner would have, uh, you know, footprints on his like slabs, on his like sculptures. So I think the shoe footprint is kind of also rooted somewhere in the back of my head of like where I come from as a ceramic artist. So it was important to me to have the like sole, or the sole be the you know the act as close as I can to the same texture as the bottom of the shoe. So my friend Brian Johnson at work, he brought in a friend of his had a pair of Jordan 1s. A friend of his who is a collector of stuff. That was my dryer. Sorry. He's a collector and he had a pair of Jordans, so he brought it into work one day at the high school, and I rolled out a thick slab of B-Mix, and I kind of made a couple, molds or prints of the negative of that, and did the same thing with a pair of Vans I was wearing at the time, and had the little press molds, and then started making like cylinders and attaching cylinders without bottoms to the slabs that I made out of the press molds, and started to look at the stitching and the construction of the shoes and just try to visually deconstruct it as best I could. And it's still a relatively new idea. It's still something that I'm definitely not where I want to be at, but it's something that I'm going to keep working on, and I seem to be getting a really good response. And they're fun, and I feel like I have there's a lot of potential and possibilities and ideas that I have floating in my mind of what I could do with these, but at the same time I have like, I don't know, like 25 or 30 that I have to glaze, that I'm like, I want to make more, but I have to glaze the ones I already started. And that's that's how it always is. I made a meme. I think people saw that meme, and that meme got really, people I made a meme, and it's the guy with the girl looking back, and a lot of people liked it, and it's so true. And I'm there right now. Like I have all this Bisqueware, all these sneaker mugs I made, and people are like, "When are you gonna have sneaker mugs ready?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm glazing them. They take me a long time to glaze. I work slow. I only have a limited amount of time, and instead of glazing, I'm talking to myself in my garage right now. I mean, I'm talking to all of you. Anyways, next question from I have a pottery mouth, which is Chanel Reed. Uh, Nelly Nails or Chanel. I don't know. She's changed her name, but her name's Chanel. She's a pottery cheerleader. She's an art cheerleader, and now she started her own thing, which is and she's recently started her own pottery practice, and it's very exciting for her. But she asked, "What inspired you to make only 2 brands of shoes where there'll be additional soon?" So back to the sneaker mugs. I guess the two that I started with, I guess to me were the two most. I guess the Jordan ones is really like an iconic thing, and it's so like rooted in a lot of parts of our culture. And me personally, being from having my dad from Chicago and me feeling like I have strong Chicago roots and being a big Bulls fan, so I always liked Michael Jordan and those Bulls colors, and um, it's the Jordan one was pretty easy because that was kind of where it started with the whole Beyond the Streets, uh, that whole story I just had, and then the Vans was kind of more, I guess, personal in my day to day life and existence because I feel growing up I was a little more on the. I was never really a skater, but I was more on the punker skaters. I know those guys. Went to shows, wore Vans all the time, and wore Chucks and now I wear Vans all the time. Like that's the shoe I normally wear my day to day life. If I have to wear shoes, I mean I'd rather wear flip flops, but if I'm not wearing flip flops, I'm wearing either my Vans slip ons or I have like the work kind of heavy dutier Vans ones, like the high tops, and those are what I wear every day. So to me, those were the kind of easy and automatic and easily accessible ones that have like, as weird as it is, the bottom was very kind of iconic and people recognize that bottom if you kind of know the shoe. And I also, when I did that, I also made a Converse, like, original like Chuck Taylor. I have that mold and I made like one mug, but I remember it was like leather and it sucked. I just like tossed it. Um, so that's kind of the third one I'm gonna do, and then I don't know what I'm gonna do after that. I know there's a lot of people have given me a lot of ideas and stuff, and I struggle to figure out which one I would do after the Converse. I think there's maybe an Adidas 3-stripe potential for something cool. I think the Yeezys is kind of cringy that might sound to some people. I think some of the Yeezys might be technically very challenging, but I think could look really cool. The one with like the vertical lines going down with the big fat like bottoms. I think they're the 300s. 300 something, I don't know. So I think those would be ones that I would want to do. I could see there's a lot of potential, but the thing I need is I need to have the real shoe so I can make a mold of the sole so then I can have. So I'm not about trying to like carve the bottom and like I'd rather just have the press mold for the bottom because the bottom I want to make as close as I can and I'll mess with the rest with the way I've done it. The next question is from M_Thullen, who is a student at the school I teach at. I don't know if he was ever my student, but there's 2 ceramics classrooms in my school, and there's been 2 ceramics teachers for a while, and I mean I know him, and I feel like I worked with him, but I don't know if I was actually his teacher. I can't remember. He says, any music you listen to that you feel brings out a more creative, confident side in your work. I don't think that I listen to any specific music to like make me give me more creativity. I feel like a lot of my creativity comes when I'm not working, when I'm like away from my studio. Um, where that's where I'm like thinking of my general idea and I'm brainstorming on ways that I'm going to approach the process I'm trying to do to make the thing look the way I want it to look. Um, I guess with the way the work I'm doing now with the sneaker mugs, it's much more calculated and it's much more kind of thought out and planned than previous work I've done, which was felt more spontaneous. This feels a little more like, you know, organized or something. So I feel like that creative problem solving part of it now comes when I'm not working. So when I am working, it's more of just like, I don't know, if like filling some space that I need to have like, I don't like working when it's quiet. It's hard to concentrate when it's quiet, but as weird as that sounds. Um, and then if I listen to music, a lot of times I go back to the same. Lately, I've been going back when I work. I like to listen to the same albums or the same playlists over and over again. I think the music it just fills that space, and I know the music, so it's like a different like zone out kind of. The music's just automatic. I like Tame Impala a lot. They're kind of like a psychedelic. Well, it's like one dude, and he's like a genius. But he's like one dude making all the music, but then he has a live band that tours with him. Tame Impala, I really like them a lot. Him a lot. And Kevin Ferguson, I think his name is. And I like Cage the Elephant and TV on the Radio. And I like those ones kind of those. I'll put those albums on, and I listen to those albums over and over again, and they just kind of fill a space. And I like a lot of times I'll listen to stuff from that I've been listening to since I was a teenager, because that's what I do. I could listen to Sublime's 40 Ounces to Freedom every day and be pretty much okay with that. And I don't know. Sometimes I'll put on some old school hip hop or Deltron 3030. I really like that album. And I like the old Gorillaz albums a lot. But I have like a big playlist. It's like my work playlist. It's like I do Amazon Music, and it's like a 600 song playlist that has a bunch of stuff that I like. So sometimes I just put that on, and it has all kinds of classic rock and 2000s rock and 90s rock and 80s stuff and some hip hop and some electronica stuff, and I don't know, like all kinds of stuff. Well, Rodrigo and Gabriella, I really like them. They're like if you don't know them, they're like two kids, not two kids, they're grown ups now, but they grew up listening to like metal, like Metallica, and then they got introduced when they were older to flamenco guitar, and then they kind of merged them. So they play like acoustic guitars. They rock the hell out of them, and a lot of people listen to them and like them. But it's like an interesting new kind of sounds that they make, and they're really cool. Get into the zone with them. Start dancing. Sorry. So those are kind of some musics that I like. I'm sure there's a bunch of other things I can't think of right now, but those are some of the ones I've gone to. Help me get in my groove. Then I got two questions that were very similar, so I put them together. One of them is from Gnome Grown, which is Parker, one of my former students. And the other one is from Ray Smoke, who is his friend that went to the rival high school, but he's cool. And they're both, they both could be my students, but now they're like my friends. They're like in their 20s. I'm a 42-year-old weirdo. Parker asks, when you find yourself not being productive, creative, what's your go-to? And then Ray asks, how do you like to reignite creativity when you're feeling uninspired or bogged down? I feel nowadays I don't have this problem because the work time. I have so much other stuff going on, but the work time I have in the studio is I pretty much already never have the like I don't know what to do thing. It's more like I don't have enough time to do what I want to do, and I want to take a vacation and just work like 10-hour days, 16-hour days in the studio, 12-hour days in the studio. I don't know. So I just like hang out and work in my garage all day. That sounds awesome. Um, so if I when I would get into those funks, oftentimes I would, I guess, if you've been following my work on my Instagram page over the last like I guess 3 or 4 years that I've been posting pretty regularly, my work's gone through a variety of like changes, but there's really like a common to me there's like a common theme of like always using the same elements more or less, and just approaching it in different ways. And I think the my recent work is probably the biggest step away from that, but it's still using a lot of the same ideas. But it's really like based on like throwing forms on the wheel and then letting them set up a little bit, and then getting to that that nice cheese hard or I don't know velvet whatever you want to call it, getting it back to that stage, and then using tools, a lot of my own handmade tools or just like pieces of wood and just like stamping and putting lines and dots mostly, like very analog, like line dot line dot. And if you go back and look at my work, like that's my common theme is like lines and dots, and that's super universal and basic, and that's how a lot of people do it. But in my mind, like that's what I'm thinking of is like lines and dots. So I always go back to like those kind of rules that I've made up. My grad show was called Game Over because I'm like, oh, like to me, ceramics is a game. And here's the game. It's like everybody plays the same video game, but you can play the same video game like 100 different ways. And I'm talking about like old, like basic games, like Pac-Man and like Super Mario Brothers. So everybody like Pac-Man has the same objective. Objective is to eat all the balls, all the pellets, and not get eaten by the ghosts. And if you eat the power pellets, you got to eat the ghosts. But the main objective is to like eat all the things. And there's not one single way to get to that like objective. There's many different routes you can take. So I guess I kind of made up games when I would throw of like I'm gonna throw a form on the wheel, and I'm gonna use these tools. Like I'm just gonna use like these two like blocks of wood. Or I'm gonna use like this pencil with the eraser on it, and like I'm gonna make up like a number. Like I can only use 9 lines because I'm weird with numbers, and I always use numbers. I don't know. It's just I'm a weirdo. So I'd make up these games in my head of like this is the game I'm playing, and it was called Game Over, and like school's a game, and you have to earn points to win the game of get your A or your B or your C. So it was in some ways a big fu to like the education system. Not the fu, but it was kind of like my game as a student is over. I'm done with this game. I only have my MA, which I kind of realized is semi worthless in like the education world. Not like I'd have a hard time getting a job as a college professor because I don't have an MFA. The MA was like 30 units. MFA was 60 units. And MA put me on the high end of the pay scale at the high school. One of my teachers, when I was in grad school, was like, "Why are you even getting an MA? Like, what are you gonna do with it? Like, you're like not even gonna be able to teach college. Maybe I could teach junior college. I don't know, but I'm pretty happy teaching high school, and I'm on the end of the pay scale, and I'm making do as an artist and podcaster and t-shirt entrepreneur and idiot professional idiot. So but yeah, anyways, to get that creativity, I always go back to my like I would always run around in circles and go back to the same basic ideas that I started with that I've been working with since I was in grad school, basically, because my grad work was pretty very much along those principles and lines, and everything I've done since then is somewhat followed that bug. Um anyways, I just kind of always go back to the same basic idea or the same game of lines and dots. But everybody has their own game to play, and everybody has their own kind of thing that they want to do. So you got to figure out what's your game, and then do that. And I'd also go look at like other artists, and it's so easy nowadays with Instagram to just be inspired and to like look at what my peers are doing or what other artists are doing. Um, a couple years ago, I was I think I was listening to the Potter's Cast, and he always asked people, recommend a book. And I remember I heard a couple people say like that book "Steal Like an Artist" by Austin Kleon. So I remember I like looked it up, and it was like like $6 on Amazon or $7 on Amazon. So it was like cheap, and I got it, and it was really easy to read. And I read that book, and I realized like how true or how like that book resonated with me in the sense that like it's hard to really be original in a lot of ways as a ceramic artist because so many things that we've done as ceramic artists have already been done. Like if I make a coffee mug, like how many billions of coffee mugs have been made by human beings over the course of human history? Like there's nothing new. So I'm stealing someone's idea to begin with. I mean, I'm making this functional object, but at the same time, it's like, what can I do to make it mine and make it original? So if you're not familiar with Austin Kleon's Steal Like an Artist, he basically just says like, like just be inspired by everything and just take little bits of everything you see and just in your entire universe and your entire world and your entire consciousness and just take what you want and what you don't like don't worry about it. And maybe sometimes you take things now and you don't use it for 5 years or 10 years or 50 years. And I'm always looking at artists on Instagram, and I'm always like saving their pictures or their images or their posts because I'm just like, that's cool. I don't know why I'm saving it. I just think it looks cool. Maybe I want to show a student later, or I want to reference it later. But I'm kind of unapologetically like looking at our other artists, and if I see some cool ideas or cool processes or techniques or color schemes or whatever, like I'm gonna not steal your style or steal your body of work, but if I see a little thing here or there, or hear a little thing, or see a new thing, I'm gonna be like, allow myself to, experiment. Okay. Next one. Do you feel like a lone wolf as a ceramic? Oh, I'm sorry. This is from Tana McLean Pottery. Tana McLean Pottery asks, do you feel like a lone wolf as a ceramic artist? Um, I've always felt kind of like a weirdo, and I've always felt like a contrarian. Um, I know I've mentioned it before, but I mentioned it before this one. Like, my dad grew up in Chicago, and he brainwashed me as a kid, and I was always the one that was like slightly different. I was always like everybody was a Dodger fan, and I was the Cubs fan. Everybody was a Raiders and Rams fan, and I was the Bear fan. Everybody was a Laker fan, and I was the Bulls fan. And like I used to always being the weirdo. And then other thing, growing up, so my mom was born Catholic. My dad was Jewish. My mom converted to Judaism when they got married. So whenever we'd have the like holiday, like this is like elementary school, whenever we had the little holiday, um, plays, there's always like, who's the Jewish kid? I am. Okay, you're doing the dreidel song. It's like, okay. And then everybody's like, oh, you're Jewish? Oh, your last name's Reich. Oh, Reich. That's like a Nazi thing. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. I'm a child. Yeah, sorry. That's my last name. I didn't really choose it. So anyways, I've always felt a little bit like a weirdo. And My family, like, there's no real artists in my family, and there's not really any teachers in my family. Um, but my family's supportive of everything. But I'm kind of, I don't know. I think I've kind of just decided somewhere along the way, like, I'm gonna do me, and I'm gonna do it my way, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it's so far, it's gotten me this far. So I definitely feel a little bit like a lone wolf, and I've definitely been ceramic artists. It's a definite. I mean, there's this really small community of people that are doing it. That's why one of the reasons I started this podcast is to bring the community closer and just share stories and just get to know each other. And I don't know, that'd be fun. Um, Gnome Grown Parker Koshine, he has another question. He asks, after 27 years, what are the key components factors that you have learned about working with clay? I guess one of the things is that everything's an experiment and everything's a test to a certain degree. I mean, it's not necessarily like you get to a certain point you know what you're doing, but there's everything is susceptible to not working out and being a failure, even if it seems like it's perfect. When it goes into that last firing, things can happen, and I never get too emotionally attached to anything. I'll definitely get upset if things happen. Like I definitely have uh time issues. So if I spend a lot of time working on something and then it breaks or it doesn't work out or it cracks. I had some mugs I was working on, and uh they seemed okay, and then after they came out of the disc fire there were some little cracks, and it's like, oh, this is cool. Because now the work I'm doing is it's like taking me so much longer than when I was just cranking stuff out. So I feel like the last body work I was doing, when I was doing the horizontal lines, I was able to make those a lot. I could make a lot more of those a lot faster than the sneaker mugs. The sneaker mugs have so many more steps, and then the glazing process is a little. I mean, the glazing process of the chroma series, as I call it, the ones with all the vertical lines and the colors. It's not a rainbow, but that body of work. The glazing took a long time, but the forming and the making of the mugs wasn't that much. But now with the sneaker mugs, the forming and making is taking a long time, and the glazing takes me a long time because I don't like glazing, and I'm not the most careful person, so I have to take my time, and I have to, just be really careful and just go slow and take my time. Um, so I guess things I've learned is to be patient. Everything's a test. Everything's an experiment. Everything can be a failure. I also realized like I know nothing. Like I don't know nothing, but there's so much I don't know, and there's so much out there that's like I've lived in such a bubble as a ceramic artist, with my experiences, and there's a lot. I haven't traveled a lot as a ceramic artist and been to other, um, a lot of other studios, and I haven't done a lot of workshops. It's been a lot of in my classroom and at the in my garage, and then the interactions I have on social media. So, um, I guess is just kind of trying to be as humble as I can, and not and understanding that there's a lot more I can learn, and also just keep going. Just keep working at it, and one day I don't really know what the end game is, to be honest. I don't think there is an end game. I think it's just a constant making, a constant process of making for your whole life. If I die at the wheel, I die at the wheel. Like that's cool with me. This one is from Becca Otis, Five Lines Pottery Studio. If you won the lottery, would you still do pottery and teach? Oh, that would be a great problem to have. If I won the lottery, I would definitely stop teaching high school. As much as I like my job, as much as I like the kids I work with, um, I think I would probably want to do something different if I had the opportunity. I think if I could focus more on being an art, I would definitely continue to do pottery, and I would do more pottery. What I would probably do, but this is almost like maybe not a win the lottery goal, but maybe just like later on in my life goal. Um, and I've actually talked to somebody that's also kind of on the same page that maybe we might go into something down the line, but this is like a 10, 15 year. Like I got a 2 and a 4 year old. This is like maybe when my kids are out of. So here's my dream. My dream would be as a high school teacher to teach until my 2 year old graduates high school. So that's like 16 years from now, 15, 16 years from now. And I would be like 57, which might be a little early to retire. I don't know. It might be late to retire. I don't know what the world's going to be like in 15 years. But my goal would be to go to graduation with him and be like, cool, we're done. And then go be a full time artist. And then maybe by then, hopefully, have already established like a private art studio, like some kind of I don't know if it would be in a ceramic studio that had 10 wheels and a couple kilns that had workshops and classes. I don't know if it would be ideally. I would love to do something like bigger. I always thought it'd be really cool to have like you could get like an old school or something, like an old elementary school that's like shut down, or like some kind of old thing, and then like, so I like all the remodeling, and then like make it into a cool ceramics thing, or just have a big ass barn. I've always wanted a barn. Part of me just wants to move to the desert, like go up near Joshua Tree and just get a big, somehow build like a art community, cool destination-y, like, um, there's all these cool like art studios all over the country, like obviously the Archie Bray has like a connection to something else, but like a place like that, like one of these private art compounds that has a bunch of cool stuff, has a bunch of kilns, and maybe even more than just ceramics, maybe even having like a foundry and having a glass blowing studio and having a thing. So part of me thinks if I won the lottery, I would do that. I would like build a freaking, I would invest all my time and money and energy into like building an art and make it super like sustainable and like eco-friendly as I could. I don't know, something like that. That would be really cool. Maybe out in like, I don't know. Part of me like if I won the lottery, part of me wonders what I would want to do because I like people, but part of me is kind of like I like to either go in the mountains or the desert and just being away from suburban life. But then I've always lived in the suburban life, so I don't know. Definitely building something. Maybe just something down the street. I live right, greater Anaheim, northern Orange County area. So there's a lot of industrial complexes around here. So get an old bank or I don't know, get an old building somewhere around here and turn it into like a ceramic studio. I just don't know if where I live there would be a community, but I guess that'd be something that I could try to build. Um, because I feel like once people get the clay bug, it can spread, but I honestly don't feel like a strong clay. I know there's a lot of ceramic artists around here, but I don't feel like I don't know. I know in other parts of Orange County there's more, but I don't know. I wonder in northern Orange County, the Brea, Yorba Linda, Placentia area, Anaheim Hills area. That's where I live. Anaheim. That Fullerton, this northern part of Orange County, like a private ceramic studio. I think that'd be cool. And then last question is from Mel101, Mel.101 underscore, which I know is one of my former students, Leslie, who graduated a couple years ago. It's kind of a dumb question, but like she asked it, and I mean, sorry, I don't say there's dumb questions, but it's kind of dumb. She asked, "Why are you such a cool teacher?" And I don't try to be a cool teacher. I don't feel like I can wear a mask and be like a douchebag jerk as a teacher that I probably should be more of. I'm kind of me, and I'm pretty tolerant, and I'm pretty, um, I try to hold my students to an expectation, but also understand that they're freaking teenagers, and maybe sometimes my expectations of them aren't what I expect out of adults. So try to be an understanding adult in their lives, and allow them to be idiots to a certain degree and make mistakes and be supportive. And, I think I have students that have graduated and they want to come back and work. And I'm like, yeah, like, how can we get you into the ceramics classroom? And, you will have this clay bug and you can't do it. Maybe you can't do it in college and you want to come in and work for a day or a couple days. Like, I have students do that, and a lot of times they'll come and they don't come back, and it's like, oh yeah, your bit square's been sitting there for like 2 years or 3 years, but I usually keep most of it. So yeah, I don't think I'm really that cool of a teacher. I'm kind of a dork, but I just try to be myself as best I can, and I feel like I'm a relatively patient and kind and accepting person of people, as long as you're not really affecting my personal space in life. I tend to be pretty tolerant of people, so like, I'm okay with weirdos, and people, not weirdos, but like, well, I'm okay with, like, most people, as long as they're cool. Like, I'm cool, so I don't know if that makes me a cool teacher. I just try to be a tolerant human being and allow people to be weird and do their own things and not be super judgmental. So I don't know. I'm just winging this whole life thing. So yeah. Anyways, that's my 10 questions. 10 and a half. Two of them, that's kind of the same question. So it was 11 questions, but I whittled it down to 10 for episode 11. And we'll see you in episode 12, hopefully coming up in a couple next Tuesday, as I've been trying to drop them on Tuesdays. So my name is Ryan Reich, and this has been Clay is a 4-letter word. Thanks for listening. Like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to, and I will see you next week, or talk to you next week. Peace.